Welcome back to another episode of the Peaky Pod by Story Archives. I'm your host, Mario, alongside
Zachary. Hello, welcome.
We are on episode 4 of season 3 of the Peaky Blinders. And once again, I'm surprised that this season is as good as it is. Zach's, if you could watch the camera right now, Zach's face is one of, his wife just walked back there with the plant because I think you guys are moving plants because it's been raining all day, I'm assuming.
Well, there's a tropical storming coming this weekend.
Oof. You know what that's good for?
Staying inside.
That's good for me watching the rest of Stranger Things because I got into it yesterday. And damn, it's dark. Oh my God.
Dark. I told you it's dark. But it's so worth it. It's really good.
It's a bit... All right, have you ever seen The Conjuring?
Yes.
Terrifying.
Yeah,
terrifying film.
It kind of...
I think they use the same... I don't want to say any spoilers, but there's a house that looks just like it, and I'm like, this shit is too dark for my taste.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Harry Potter does a jump from the second to the third book, and then the fourth book.
Yeah.
That it gets darker and darker as the kids get older.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a natural progression. But Stranger Things just went like 0 to 100. Like, it should just turn into like a, horror level... I could see them keeping this pace up and doing something like this. I don't know how the mid-season ends, but I could see them doing another 2 seasons with this kind of tone.
Honestly, I
know we're going down a rabbit hole.
I'm trying not. Quick thing. I'm trying not to give any spoilers for it, but this is the first half of a season, and there's another. I guess I don't know if it's going to be the second part of the season or an additional season. It's releasing in like a month. I think they could conclude the story in that next season, and it would be at a great place to just kind of stop it.
Just kill the whole thing.
Yeah, because if they keep it going, it's like, oh, what are you gonna do? Follow them into college now?
No, it would be interesting if they didn't resolve this particular antagonist in this season, and roll it over into the next one.
Yeah,
that would be interesting because they haven't done that yet, right?
Yeah, everything's always been taken care of within the same season.
They can take a page from the Peaky Blinders, like how Campbell's in season 1, and then it takes 2 seasons to resolve that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, probably assuming that this storyline in season 3 takes a while to resolve as well, because the players that Tommy's dealing with in this season are no joke. Especially in this episode where he gets the holy living crap beaten out of him.
Much worse than season 1 and 2.
Yeah, where Campbell beats him up.
Yeah.
I'd
rather take the Sabini beating.
You know what, though? Tommy was in the hospital immediately after that one. This one, he does a whole day of work after he gets the crap beaten out of him. Like, it's almost...
I would say this is more
unrealistic.
Yeah, it is unrealistic. It's more of a critical
because he lives in the countryside, so it's like he gets there in the morning, and then I think they let him rest for a day. I think that's what the gist of it was, because he's laying down on a stretcher half the time in some of these, right?
Yeah.
Let's start the episode and get it going. Pleasantly surprised as usual. Let me lower the volume here. I also have you in my speakers, so hopefully that didn't pick up feedback. So I just took you out of my speakers.
I'm sure it probably did a little bit, but we'll work past that.
Yeah, at least it was in the first 4 minutes. So one of the key things that happens at the beginning of this episode, and it's interesting because we don't get a lot of mention of the Shelby's parents, right? Is that Tommy, Arthur, and John, I guess Finn's dad too, died. They don't show him die on camera, but they get word from his girlfriend in Boston or something or other that he's dead. And that kind of comes into play at the end of the episode where Tommy brings it up again. Don't let me forget that. But at the start of this, it's very much the beginning of the robbery planning of how they're going to pretty much steal the jewels and all the diamonds and the valuables that the royal Russians have in their estate. And they're just currently trying to figure out, first and foremost, how they're going to get it, who's in on the job and who's down for it, what their method of infiltrating is going to be via spy. And yeah, that's pretty much the full details there. I found it kind of interesting that he's including Michael for the first time in a nefarious plot. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, in the last episode, we kind of saw. I feel like we started to see Michael go down that path, anyways, just with his little training session.
Oh, you mean last episode?
With John and Arthur? Yeah, last episode. So it kind of feels like a natural progression of things, and I don't know. Everything is just not what you would have expected it to be at the beginning of the season because of Grace's death. Everything's kind of being flipped on its head right now.
Everything's kind of just in a scramble right now.
Yeah.
I will mention that the ceremony they did for their dad dying was to kill a stag because that was the one thing that he taught them to do. Mm-hmm. And they discussed that his name dies with him unless Arthur decides to name his child after himself. That's pretty much the agreement. But it seems all the brothers pretty much agree that his name dies with him because he was a no good. He was just a rotten dad to all of them. I always find it interesting that Finn also has the same father, considering how separated they are in age difference. You know?
Oh, I know. Like, he had to have just recently gone out of the picture. I mean, what, in season 1, Finn is 6?
Bro, Finn looks like 4 in season 1.
So, I mean, he must not have been that long.
Maybe not 4. Let's say like 6. 6 sounds about right.
Yeah.
Anywhere between 6 and 10, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I find it interesting because there's a theme coming kind of clear here where Tommy can't trust his family. He can't trust Arthur because he doesn't keep his mouth shut. He tells everything to his wife, Linda. Mm-hmm. And he can't trust him with the details of these jobs because he's finding himself in a situation where it's leaking to the rest of the women in the company. But we get a scene where Paulie is now bogged down by the details of what Tommy is sharing with her. Mm-hmm. And she actually ends up being the reason he gets the absolute hell beaten out of him in this episode. And pretty much derails the plot of the season and his plans of what he had intended to kill Father Hughes, right? Mm-hmm. Because she goes and confesses to a priest about the murder of a holy man. Mm-hmm. Which naturally, she doesn't know the despicableness of Father Hughes, right? So
No, not at all.
She's not assuming everybody's a mole. But I think it kind of comes back to where they're in the kitchen of Tommy's house and they say, let's act like we belong here. I think she is still trying to adjust to the reality that the plots that Tommy's taking on are so big that nobody outside the family can be trusted. Yeah. And even then, the family can't be trusted because there's a couple of times in this episode where Tommy withholds information from Arthur, whether on the phone or in person.
Yeah, and I mean that's also a recurring pattern that we've seen since season 1 as well. There's been many things, like the gun shipment that Tommy didn't trust Arthur with. So this is just becoming more prevalent because it's now growing beyond more people.
And that was more to protect them, and it still went wrong. But this is more to protect them against themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, your blabbering mouth could get you in trouble. Like, there's a time in this episode where Esme kind of feels herself a bit too much. She's like, you're going to sack the Russians, aren't you, Tom? You're going to sack them for all they got. I'm like, where is that? How is that her business? It's a danger for her to know that information, and stupid for John to have told her, considering she's pregnant. I mean, it's just, you know, the business that we're in. It's better. It's not that we don't trust you. It's that you shouldn't know, because if they take you, there's literally nothing you can tell them. There's nothing they can do to you because you just don't know.
Exactly.
So
it's better not knowing sometimes. This is that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it later in the episode where Tommy gets beaten up, where the maid's questioning him, saying, why did you tell all the soldiers to leave the house? It's because Tommy literally can't trust anybody. He doesn't know who's going to come for his son at any time.
Yeah.
All right. Subplot of this episode, I think we start to see the empowerment of the women in the Shelby company in this episode, where they go out on strike, kind of led by Linda and enabled by Paulie, who's kind of out of sorts from her confessional. But Esme just seems like she's being cooped up, and it's kind of like cabin fever for her. I mean, she's doing cocaine while being pregnant and complaining about everything.
I can only imagine how well that combo plays out.
Yeah, and Lizzie admits to... Is this the episode where Lizzie admits to having sex with Tommy?
Probably. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I think we find out that Tommy and her have been kind of like, she's been helping him get over Grace's death in a sense. Yeah, this is the episode where she mentions that. Well, we also see another bit of that where Tommy's kind of in the dumps about Grace, and you know, he kind of is trying to get over it through either Lizzie or through Tatiana, as we see in this episode as well. Where
Tatiana definitely helps in this episode.
I mean, he knows that she's not like the girl he's gonna end up with or take serious or anything like that. But it's like sometimes you just give yourself to that fling to get your mind off it in some sense. And so you imagine him in that grief. He can't trust anybody in the family, and he's got somebody who actually knows about what he's up to. So it's kind of like a perfect little storm of the situation there. But even then, he's still trying to. He's second guessing himself, because he tells John Boy to go puncture her tires outside so that he can't change his mind. And he says so that neither of us can change our minds, because he obviously doesn't want to. It's just one of those things that he's kind of forcing himself to do. But I love how the family gives him hell for it. And he's like, I'm working. I'm working. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to get information. I'm like, it's a sweet gig, buddy.
Sure. Working, air quotes.
And she's fine, too. Part of me in this episode was thinking to myself, she would be both the best and the worst woman for him, because she tells him at one point in the episode, from now on, you have to do everything exactly as you want to do, which is kind of the worst thing and the best thing you could tell Tommy Shelby, because you know his ambitions will just eventually end up consuming him and killing everybody around him, probably.
That is for sure.
But in terms of like support system, like just one-on-one, ride or die, like she kind of is not a bad person to have, especially as he's elevating in culture or in society, not culture, because she accuses him of acting like a boy who broke in through the window. That's how he's living in that house of his. And so she kind of does bring up some interesting points of like how to wield authority. And you see the opposite with the women in his family, that they feel like they can ask for more money, and Linda's negotiating on behalf of Arthur. And they're getting involved in the business and complicating matters and the plans of something that they don't even understand. Like, they don't understand what's behind the robbery. They don't understand that it's a nefarious insider group within the government that's very powerful, that could kill them all at any moment, you know? They don't understand. They just think it's Tommy's withholding us and being an authoritarian. They don't understand that, no, you got this priest and you got this whatever the hell, Patrick Jarvis, whatever his name is, do.
Yeah, there is a lot at stake. Yeah, that kind of makes me wonder, you know, how much of this do they really know? I think they know, but they just don't. And it's definitely for the better.
Yeah, it's for their own good. Thoughts on the whole, what does Lizzie call them? They have a name, as they unionize themselves in this episode where the women go on strike. It's apparently Good Friday. In the episode,
it's a holy day.
Yeah, and that's why they're upset about being at work. Yeah, I like how
nobody else was there.
Yeah, well, all the men are out in the countryside. It's kind of like a good contrast. They're in the office working, and then the men are out planning a robbery.
The good side and the bad side.
Yeah. Tatiana and Tommy, what's your take on the Russian? What are the Russians trying to get at here with her and trying to seduce Tommy, and how do you think that this actually plays into Tommy's hand, or it just in general the overall plot?
It's interesting. I mean, the first thing I would mention is, first of all, that they are an interesting duo. She's definitely supportive, I guess you could say. But I think she's really here to either gain information or try to help control him and make sure he does what they want done.
Yeah. I first watched this, like my first watch ever of this season. I couldn't stand her character, but she does grow on you. She's one of the only, I don't think Tommy's ever had a love interest who's ever spoken to him so bluntly about everything.
No, I don't think so.
Like
either.
She's a wild cannon or a loose cannon.
A loose cannon, yeah.
What am I thinking? I'm thinking about wild card.
Wild card.
Yeah.
Oh, she's a wild card too, I guess.
Like she just is unpredictable what she's gonna do. One second she's having sex with you, and then the next she's taking a loaded gun and running around the house and getting naked and asking the maid to watch them while they, like I mean, and she does it purposely, like underneath Grace's portrait.
Yeah, I noticed that. She's you don't know what to expect with her. You honestly don't.
Yeah. John Boy has plans here in this episode in terms of trying to help Esme in her cabin fever.
Mm-hmm. You got to get her out into more land. I mean, she is a gypsy at heart. And all of like the rest of the Lee family is all out and about still. They don't really settle down from what I can tell at all.
Yeah, she's been the only one pretty much asked to give up that life to become a Shelby.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But John does promise her that he's going to buy this large house, and you kind of want to see two things. You want to see her in a happier place. You also want to see John Boy kind of find himself in the family and what his role is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the midst of Tommy sleeping with Tatiana, he's obviously digging for information about where the jewelry is. A lot of his conversation revolves around where the diamonds are and what he would do if he had them, and he's kind of asking questions to learn more about them and where they could be inside of the house, or if they even are in the house. And I think she's kind of oblivious to it.
She does. I mean, she's either playing dumb really well, or she really doesn't know what's going on.
I think she's just genuinely interested in Tommy and like the lifestyle that he leads. I also think that she kind of finds this as her opportunity to find herself in another duchess, or is she a princess or a duchess?
I think she's a duchess.
Yeah,
let's
call her a duchess. She's a duchess.
Uh-huh.
She is essentially someone who's estranged. She's been robbed of the opportunity to truly be royalty in her country because the Bolshevik Revolution happened while she was so young. But at the same time, now you see Tommy, who's kind of coming of age and becoming new royalty in the UK of sorts, right? Mm-hmm. But he's not really embracing the lifestyle. And they're kind of like meeting 50-50 here in some sense. Like she's half right and he's half right.
Yeah.
In some sense. Where she's wrong about the way they treat the servants and all that kind of stuff, but right about the way that he's, not just going full at whatever he needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
I could be talking out of my behind there, but
she really does taunt him a lot in this. I wasn't sure what to think about this the first time I watched it. She's like,
she literally shows
like she's
him
half suicidal. Like one moment wants to shoot a photo of his wife or whatever.
No, she literally pulls the trigger on her own head. She shows him Russian roulette.
Yeah.
And pulls the trigger. She leaves one bullet in there and literally pulls the trigger on herself.
That's so risky, dude. I mean, the chance that you get that wrong, 1 in 6.
Ugh. I'll always think of Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter.
Have you ever seen that?
I don't know.
It's a film. You would know if you saw it. It's with Robert De Niro and Christopher Walken. And
oh no, I don't think I've seen it.
It's a famous film, and there's a Russian roulette scene that is just iconic. That nothing. When you watch that, everything else just like. When you think of Russian roulette, your mind comes to that scene.
I'll have to watch it just for that.
Back at the office, Tommy goes over the plans with John and Arthur regarding tunneling. The plan is to tunnel into the Russian mansion to get the jewelry. And they have an informant who's a Russian kid who actually has a prior with breaking and entering, but they feel like they can get an edge on him because he wants a bar. And they're talking about giving him some Italian property that they had seized from the Changrettas in order to get him to infiltrate and spy on this Russian family with the staff for the next 4 weeks. I found the tunneling plan interesting considering the PTSD these guys have with the tunnels.
I was gonna say the same thing. I wonder what sort of effect that would have on them. It'd also be interesting to see them at their craft. It's what they had done in the war.
Yeah, I mean they are good at it, right? But they also, I just remember season 1 where Tommy has like the guys digging through the wall and stuff like that in his PTSD episode.
Yeah.
I imagine that's going to take a toll. Like the last place they want to be is underground.
Yeah, covered with no way out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having a PTSD episode and being in a claustrophobic environment under the ground when you got to be quiet, that would be rough.
Yeah. Well, we find out, and you kind of like they foreshadow it a bit when Paulie's giving her confession to the priest early in the episode, that there's going to be a hit on a holy man, and if it's coming from Paulie, what holy man do they know? It's 2 and 2 is Father Hughes.
Yep.
We find out, we know the way the camera is working and the way the actor is acting in that scene, that he is baiting information about who the murder is going to be of. Right? And we see Father Hughes go to him, confirming the fact that the priest was a mole. So, hands down, we know that Tommy's plan is going to go completely wrong later in this episode. From there on
inevitable.
out. In between that scene, we get Linda negotiating for Arthur.
I must say, I think, the beginning of my extreme dislike. Linda? Yeah, exactly, for Linda. I think this is. I could tolerate everything up to this point.
It ramps up,
even
from
though
here,
she was
certainly.
Controlling. Yeah. But this is really the catalyst.
And the fact that Arthur has allowed this to happen in some sense, where she's an outsider, so to speak.
Yeah.
We never even get really an answer as to how they met or anything like that. And we were only introduced to her about 3 episodes ago. So she does make a strong impression, that's for sure. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, she does.
The gist of her negotiation is that they want to leave to America. And she's trying to get as much money as possible from this robbery so that it can be their last as they head out to... I think they want to head out to California. I think that's the goal.
That's what she says. I kind of find it interesting that Arthur doesn't have the balls to come say this.
I don't think Arthur knows about this. I highly doubt Arthur knows about this.
I mean, that is another possibility. And it kind of, plays into what I was saying about Linda earlier, is that she's just very controlling. Even a little bit that we've been seeing here in the last couple episodes, she's a very controlling person. She wants it her way.
Well, she's not stupid.
And that's
she knows that she controls Arthur, and Tommy knows that she controls Arthur. So he's there to cut the bullshit. He knows that little strike that the women did was on through her goading, right? And so he's trying to figure out, what the hell do you want? He knows it's money at the end of the day.
Of course.
So he cuts to the chase. He knows it's more money, and they're essentially, this whole thing is a negotiation for what it is that's going to get Linda out of his hair and causing issues in his company, both with Arthur and with riling up the ladies. Tommy's plan. I don't think we've ever seen Tommy beating the hell out of the way he gets. You know what it is? It's the crack of the skull that makes me twinge every single time.
Yeah, it makes me cringe too. I was like, oh no.
When he runs up to him, he has a chance to shoot him.
I know. Sometimes you just got to take a risk and just do it quick. Just get it done. Just get the job done.
Notice, as he went into the bathroom, there was a moment where he could have just definitely taken him out. There was at least half a second.
How did you like the... yeah, it's coming up right here.
Just...
Let's see.
1.
Where you at?
2. There's your head. Boom. Maybe not.
I don't think he got enough of him to confirm that it was who he was supposed to kill anyways, not from behind like that.
That's true. That would have been a nightmare if he killed somebody else. And then Father Hughes just comes out of the other stall, toilet flushes, and you're like...
What happened?
Yeah.
Wrong man.
Wrong stall, buddy.
Yeah, really. How did you like the, Father Hughes running around picking up the little children and spinning in circles?
It just makes you hate him more. It's like
I know.
It's more frustrating because you see him doing his little pedo-y stuff, and the plan's gonna fail. So it's no matter how despicable this guy is, I know it doesn't get resolved right now.
Yeah.
Also, even besides that, it felt too soon to resolve that character because the other guy from the Economic League is nowhere near as like somebody to revile as he is. Talk about an inconvenient spot to bring Tommy to after he's been knocked unconscious. What is the location with all the light rays coming down? And
I don't know.
Pillars
I've always wondered that. It looks kind of mystical, but I don't know. It also looks like a sewer. It
looks like an old sewer. It looks like an old sewer. I read a book. I don't know where I have it, but it was about this Frenchman who would rob people, and he would go through the sewers of old Paris, I think it was, or old
Lupin?
London. No, it wasn't Lupin. It was probably based off of Lupin, like inspired by it. But it was London, and I forgot the name of it. But the guy would use the sewers to get away, and it was really interesting. I like books about like old thieves from like olden times, like the early 1900s or like 1800s or whatever.
Everything seems a little more fun then.
I haven't found many good books though about them. There was one called The Thief Lord that I absolutely loved, and I really haven't read too many more than that. The Count of Monte Cristo is terrific, but it's really not about a thief.
I've almost bought in that book, but oh my god, it's so big.
Well, I don't know what version you're buying, but you don't have to get the unabridged.
Okay.
That might be blasphemy, but I didn't read the unabridged, and it's probably my second favorite book ever.
Okay. I'm in the last book of the Divine Comedy still, but I've switched to another book in the meantime. I'm taking a little break.
Of course, that book is so difficult to read. Also, like just reading that for joy is not like, it's like
the first book, The Inferno, is great. The second one is torture reading. The third one, other people told me they thought it was worse than the Purgatory, but the Paradiso is, in my opinion, is better than the Purgatory book.
Do you find that you're actually understanding and learning reading that, or it's just like you finish it and you're like, what the did I just read?
No, like I'm telling you, the version I have is like the best. I mean, it's the only one that I've ever bought, but it is really, really, really good. It's really easy to understand.
I was told
because they do a lot of breakdowns of what's going on.
Yeah, I was taught by a teacher of mine that, I mean, that's like part of a classical curriculum. So it's like one of those things where you do need some guidance reading a book like that, and even if the book is good, because it's one of those things where it's so deep and nuanced for the time period that it's impossible to get that all from a commentary. So I've always felt like I needed to do that with a course, and I have a handful of the classics that I need to read here, like The Republic, and I think Plato's Symposium is another one, all that stuff. But
back to Tommy.
Yeah, back to Tommy. When he gets beaten up, he's told this plan by Father Hughes that they are essentially, he's leaking information on behalf of Section D. What do they call themselves? The Odd Fellows, Section D, economically? Which one?
He said Section D. Right?
They're all the same thing, but I just always kind of like have all three of those names. It's like a roulette in my head with these names.
Yeah.
Essentially, he's telling him to, hey, back off what you were trying to do with the Russians. Apologize. Hey, you were mistaken. And essentially what they want is that this robbery goes wrong. They're working against the Russian royalists at the end of the day. They want the robbery to go wrong so that the Russians commit an act of violence on British soil. That's the big game here. Now, I don't think he wants Tommy to take it that far, as Tommy does by talking to somebody from the Soviet embassy later. But after he gets his skull bashed in, he does a bunch of cocaine and has to get on about his day.
Freaking cocaine is the Shelby's miracle drug, man.
Yeah, it's like their Band-Aid for everything.
I'm gonna walk into a restaurant and just greet
Considering the beating, he looks okay. I mean, as good as he can. He looks awful, but what I'm trying to say is like his cranium has been cracked open.
Yeah, it is cracked. I
mean,
he
lives in the country. It's probably an hour drive from the Ritz.
Oh, I'd imagine. He's
maybe
sweating
longer.
Bullets, though.
Sweating bullets. Probably has a fever. He's probably dying. Like he's literally probably dying at this moment.
You're gonna have it like internal bleeding in your head. I mean, you're not gonna have like a lot of physical issues on the outside of your body. I mean, it was pressure that literally cracked your freaking head open.
You get the sense that when he's at the dinner and they're essentially trying to do damage control with what Tommy told them, that the priest was a rat or whatever. You get the sense that the Russians are almost terrified of the people that not Tommy. They're terrified of
Section
Hughes,
D.
and
Yeah.
they don't trust them. They would prefer to have dealt with Tommy alone.
Yeah.
You even see as he's walking away that Leon kind of grabs him by the arm, like in a caring way. It's almost like they are lost without Tommy in this scenario. And I would have to agree. Tommy, little do they know, Tommy's planning to rob them blind.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the devil you know type of thing.
Yeah, and you know what? When I was watching this, the feeling that I got was that the Russians here really trusted Tommy, and like the way that Father Hughes is talking
So
with
sus.
Tommy, I know everybody's like giving him like some side eye there, like what? I don't think the Russians trust Father Hughes at all right now at this point, especially at this point.
No, not at all.
This guy's just like over the top trying to cover his ass, and it's too blatantly obvious for my taste.
Yeah, and well, as Tommy continues his day, his two missions were to clear up the mess with the Russians and apologize for telling them that Father Hughes was a rat, which he is, and also I still help me figure out what his game plan is here with talking to the Soviet embassy. He's obviously putting his neck on the line because what he's saying is. He's telling them the truth of what they want. They want the robbery to be botched and what the game plan is. They want the Russians to attack on British soil, so that they can talk away from peace talks.
Yeah.
Now, he's doing this because if their plan is successful, he knows that his family is going to be the one that's sacrificed.
Yep.
So it seems to me that Tommy, everything has gone wrong, and now it's kind of like damage control for him as well. Like, I need to protect my family at this point. I'm probably going to die, but I have to protect the rest of the Shelbys, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, I think this would all fall on their heads.
But I gotta say, I love Ada and Tommy's relationship. She's so sweet and adorable here, where she's so concerned for her brother. She's like, Tommy, what's going on? You know, as Tommy's he can't see. He's literally losing his vision. And we get the first mention of Tommy ever speaking directly to his parents as he's closing his eyes and going unconscious here. He tells Ada to take him to the hospital. But he says, I can't see. But then he goes away, and there's like this dramatic moment where he says, but I can see you, Dad. And he kind of like does a little smile, like an eye smile, which I found interesting because their dad was a piece of crap. But it's interesting because I truly do believe when you're like losing consciousness like that you see things that other people can't see. So I would not be surprised if that was... I haven't looked at any commentary from Stephen Knight as to if it was a literal...
I was thinking
or what?
when I had heard or saw that, it was more of like he's going to die. He thinks he's going to die.
Well, it's like his dad just died, so it's kind of bringing the whole episode full circle.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Ada's always there. She's great. She's there when she needs to be.
She's always the one he calls for. I mean, anything from a strategic level. When when everything goes wrong, she's on that speed dial. I'll say that. She's like on the favorites list.
That's for sure. I don't think they had speed dial then.
She also was the closest to the Ritz, probably.
I would imagine so.
Because she's in the heart of London.
Yeah, she lives in downtown, basically. Yeah.
Well, that wraps episode 4. It leads us to just this situation where Tommy's now pinned against the Soviet embassy, the interests of Churchill, the interest of Section D, and the interest of these royalists. It's a pretty sticky place, and there's only 2 episodes to go in terms of resolving it all.
Yeah.
I gotta say, season 3 definitely has way more jam-packed in this season than I ever remembered. I just kind of not sure why I
ever disliked it or didn't like it as much as the others.
Why my slander for season 3 was as strong as it was, I don't recall.
I don't know either.
I kind of want to rewatch this episode because of all the stuff that happened in the dialogue, specifically about the robbery and whatnot. I feel like all those things, whenever it comes to Tommy's plans, I always find that I've lost like the details somewhere in the weeds there. But all right, let's get to the categories.
All right. Best scene of the episode.
I like the little affair between Tatiana and Tommy. I like that whole scene, the whole thing. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. That was good. I'm trying to pick one that is not that one.
Why? Because that was that yours?
It was probably one of the most memorable ones from this episode. The other most memorable part of this episode for me is just the skull crack. Like every time I think
the skull crack, jeez,
yeah, it's not my favorite. It's just memorable. Every time I think about Tommy getting beat up, you know, I always remember the skull crack. So I won't give it best scene, but I guess I'd give it the most memorable scene.
That sound is like etched in your head, literally.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Literally,
I never want to hear it again.
What's up? What's next?
All right, most memorable characters or character.
Tatiana.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
She owned her moment in this episode.
Yeah,
Russian roulette, from everything. She just is like on a bender.
Yeah, I would have to give it to her as well. I have to give it to her.
Yeah, no Zach there. I think she really does. It's hard to do to take one from Tommy, but I think she took this episode in terms of imprint and remembering the craziness and the wildness, how she lives.
Absolutely. All right, the last one I have, and I cannot think of any iconic lines from this episode, but do you have a best line of the episode?
I think it's also Tatiana. I think it's when she says... something, I don't know the line verbatim, but where she says, "You live in this mansion, but you act like a boy who broke in through a window. You live in this big house by yourself and act like a boy who broke in through the window." Yeah. I like that line. I also like when the servant in the morning, how she took his car, and he asked, "Why would you listen to her?" And she goes, "It was the way she said it, sir." It was just kind of doubling down, reiterating that there was some truth to what she was saying.
Awesome. All right, I like that. I like the first one that you mentioned a lot more.
Yeah,
like the boy that broke in through the window.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other ones in this episode that really stood out to me. Not like the last episode, that's for sure.
I think the theme of this season kind of has been the Shelbys adjusting to the high life. Right, adjusting to this life of grandeur and the complications it brings with it. I think everyone is dealing with that sense of that imposter syndrome of feeling like they don't belong or that they don't deserve what they have, which maybe they don't, but they did work for it technically, although immorally. But it seems like all of them are dealing with that in a way. Paulie with the portrait artist, how she's wearing that dress and she doesn't feel like she owns it. Tommy in the mansion and the life without grace, John Boy and his place in the family, Esme and being cooped up, Lizzie kind of in between loving Tommy but at the same time totally being a rebound and being used.
Yeah.
Ada, slowly kind of getting that itch to come back towards the family but getting distracted with all those other things that she's doing. Everybody has like their little thing that they're dealing with. Michael towing that line between, I'm new to the family, I'm legitimate. Yeah. So it's generally the theme of the whole season. So looking forward to 5 and 6. I know, I've already watched them, so I know they ramp up, but, and the things that we learn in the next 2 episodes, I'm really interested in these next 2 because all of the little things that slipped through the cracks on previous rewatches of this season, 5 and 6 have the most that go on, of course, because it's the last 2 episodes of the season.
Yep.
But there's a lot of stuff that I bet you there's going to be a lot of little tidbits that we pick up on that we're not going to realize until after.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to have to pay extra attention to the next 2.
For sure.
Join us for episode 5 and find out what happens to Tommy.
Yeah, join us. Thank you for joining us on this journey so far. And Zach's going to carry us away with the outro. But once again, I'm going to give the call to action. Please like, follow, subscribe. Give us a rating. Anything helps. Wherever you listen to it helps us tremendously. We're newbies in this game, but it's nice to have you all here at the ground floor with us as we kind of figure out and build out what Soapbox and Story Archives will become and what it is now. So thank you and stay tuned. Zach, it's yours now.
For sure. Well, thank you for listening to episode 4, season 3 of the Peaky Blinders podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you find podcasts. You can find us on Instagram at Story Archives. You can visit our website at storyarchives.themidnightexchange.com. Which brings us to our podcast network, the Midnight Exchange. You can visit the website there at themidnightexchange.com. There's a whole bunch of links to other podcasts, social media, etc. And if you want to drop us an email, you can send us an email at podcast@themidnightexchange.com.
Until next time, stay peaky, everybody.
Sure.